Hello and welcome to Empower Hour Topic Sessions. I'm Amy Miller. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am starting a little bit early, so if you were hoping to tune in at 4, then I apologize for starting a little bit early and I invite you to watch the replay. So thank you for that. And today, this topic is geared specifically toward hiring managers. As you all may know, I'm a recruiter and I'm also a hiring coach and consultant. So what that means is that I have a training program that helps leaders not only make lasting future hires with confidence, but also with less stress. Doesn't that sound like a good thing? And if you're not a leader and you're curious, I invite you to go ahead and keep watching, because the concept that I'm going to talk about today, which is how taking time creates time, can actually be applied to all areas in your life. And I also do some one-on-one professional coaching, helping folks in overcoming those bigger challenges and achieving their bigger goals. And of course, this core concept is applied there as well. So how can taking time create time? I'm sure that you all will agree, whether you are a hiring manager leading a team or not, that your time is valuable. It's something that once you spend it, it's gone and you're not going to get it back. So sometimes it might seem like not doing something is going to, help you save time. But is it really? So I'm going to go over a few examples today to hopefully lock in the concept and the message of how taking time can later create time. And Tony Robbins talks about this too. He calls it something different. He calls it RPM, rapid planning method. I was trying to remember, and I remembered it. I always get excited when other folks that are a few steps ahead of me in their career, I would say Tony Robbins is a few steps ahead of me in his career, talk about the same kind of concepts, but maybe in a different way. So how can taking time create time? So if you're a hiring manager, you are busy. If you are building a team or looking to backfill an opening, that can feel like two jobs at the same time: the recruiting, interviewing, and hiring process, and then also leading and managing your team. So you might sometimes feel like you're saving time, for example, by not following up with your recruiter or by not effectively communicating with candidates. And by not doing something, we think that maybe we are saving time. So I'll give you an example. When I am working with a hiring manager on an opening, I require, if possible, time with them initially on the phone. Get on a call and for 15, 20, sometimes even 30 minutes to learn and hear firsthand from the hiring manager what they're looking for that particular opening and why. And if it's my first time recruiting for that company, well, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the culture. That's going to help me better paint a picture for each candidate that I speak to, and also the product or service, because of course I can get online and I can research, but I'm going to be much better informed hearing straight from the hiring manager what they're looking for, why, and a little bit about the company culture, the dynamics, and day-to-day of the role. And from the hiring manager perspective, by taking that time initially with your recruiter at the start of their search, maybe just one time for 20 minutes even, then your recruiter is better informed and they can start a more targeted search. And then they're more likely to later save you time by sending you qualified candidates from the start. Because on the other hand, let's say you feel like maybe you're saving time by not connecting with the recruiter and just sending them an email. I need star candidates for this territory. Well, we have a lot of questions here, and candidates, if they're good candidates, they have their priorities straight and they need to know more information to discern whether they want to prioritize this opening and potentially move forward. Now, it's not to say that a good recruiter, including myself, can't deliver solid candidates and win the job and get the job done with having, just a limited information, but we're going to do the job faster and more thoroughly if we have an opportunity to speak to the leader who's hiring for that opening. Because as I was mentioning, candidates are going to have questions, and I've worked on openings where I have a lot of information because the manager has spent time with me on the phone and even shared the story of the company culture and the role and the product, so that I can then share the story in the same way. And if I don't have that information, like sometimes a candidate might ask me, can you share a little bit about the day in the life? And if I don't have it, I have limited information as far as what I can give them. So then what happens is maybe the recruiter and the candidate decide, okay, let's go ahead and move you forward and get you presented. But then the hiring manager is spending time potentially with candidates who are either not going to be interested, maybe once they learn more about the role, or maybe are not a good fit. So that is one example of how by taking time on the front end and speaking with your recruiter, educating them on what you're looking for and why, and selling them the role, the opportunities and upside, as well as the challenges, as you would sell it to your star candidate. Then your recruiter can take that information and share it again and again and again with each candidate. So that's one example of how taking time on the front end is going to later save you time throughout your hiring process. And the top two contributing factors that that have come up in my research as well as my own experience, and I'd love to hear your thoughts if you find this as well, if you are leading a team. The top two contributing factors that lead to bad hires are a rushed process and poor communication. So why would we want to rush the process? Well, maybe we think that we're saving time by not going through all of these maybe necessary steps in making sure we get the right hire in place. But how can taking that time, adding some extra steps as needed, and or just having a solid process in place that involves minimum 5 steps in the interview process, how can that later save you time? So I'll give you a couple of examples. One hiring manager that I was working with a while back, after I interviewed, 30-minute phone interview with myself and the candidate and presented the candidate, he wanted to go straight to in-person interviews. I think they were just wanting to hire quickly. And so this candidate, I knew a lot about the company and the role. So I felt like I'd had a thorough conversation with the candidate where I had explained the job pretty well, and the candidate assured me that he was interested. And then what the candidate went straight to in-person interviews, and so the hiring manager was there and his director was also there. So this is 2 leaders there, and then the candidate, both all traveling, and then they've got an hour blocked off for this meeting. And I was so embarrassed and felt so bad later when I got the feedback from the manager that after 5 minutes into the interview, the candidate excused themselves from the interview, and they said, you know what, after hearing more about the opportunity, this is not what I'm looking for, and this is not a fit. And I just thought, oh my goodness, how did that happen? And I was most upset that the hiring manager and his director had wasted their time. And I think, so how could taking time on the front end, taking a little bit more time to add an extra step, like maybe a 30-minute phone interview after myself and the candidate, with the candidate and the manager. So yes, that's an extra 30 minutes that the manager is going to need to take out of their day to talk with the candidate and better articulate the role. You know, oftentimes we don't always take in, that is, all of the information the first time we hear it. That's why with advertising, what is a statistic that maybe it's 7 touch points or 7 ads before the message and the product or service actually sinks in, where we actually pay attention. So important always to, I think, connect with the rep on a phone interview before meeting with them in person. An interview process, I believe, should be like dating, where each party, the company, the manager, and the candidate, are going to vet their interests the more that they learn, and then they can decide how much of an investment they want to make in moving forward and continuing their research and time investing in the opportunity. And another option, let's say the manager really does not have time to do the 30-minute interview. I bet there's a rep on your team that is looking for some additional leadership responsibilities. You could have that rep do the 30-minute interview, and then the candidate can learn firsthand from somebody on the team the dynamics, the day-to-day, the upside and opportunities and challenges of the role. And they may learn in that 15, 30 minutes with the rep that, you know what, this is actually not what I'm looking for. And then you've empowered somebody on your team and you've not wasted any time on your calendar. So that's another example. And I'll share one more because I think we've got the message pretty well locked in here. But another time, I was working with the manager who she did go ahead and do a 30-minute phone interview with the candidate after I presented the candidate. But then from there, she had him, she scheduled an in-person interview, which involved air travel. And it was a rush process in that the candidate had to hurry up and get time away from his current role, which he should be prioritizing until he knows enough about your opportunity to discern whether it's a fit. So that's kind of a big ask to have somebody turn around and do air travel after just one touch point with the company later that same week. But he did, he got the time off work and he went and met the manager for the in-person interview. And she later gave me feedback that she was passing on this candidate because she said that he was really quiet and she was understandably concerned that that may not be, he might be too timid for the role. It could be a potential challenge being assertive with customers. She said she was actually having a hard time hearing him during the interview. So maybe that was hard to pick up on a phone interview, but how could adding an extra step, so in other words, taking time later have created time, saving that manager and the candidate time too from taking off from his current role and then traveling? Well, since the manager was not local, she could have had the rep meet for coffee, maybe with a local rep. And then, or if there was any red flag or hesitation during the conversation that maybe the candidate seemed a little bit timid and or quiet, you could even turn around and bring that concern back to the recruiter and ask the recruiter to follow back up with the candidate and have a deeper conversation and look out for that potential hesitation and see if they can kind of vet that out during another conversation. So always better to add additional steps in the interview process to later save yourself time. So those are just a few examples of how in the hiring process, taking time creates time. Now, if you're not a hiring manager, how can taking time create time? Well, let's say you are working toward you're working on a presentation, and maybe it's the first time that you are preparing for this presentation. You want to take a lot of time preparing on the front end initially. And then each time you practice, so again, throughout, that's more examples of how taking time creates time. Practice with practice, and the more you practice, the less time it's going to take you to prepare moving forward. So yeah, hopefully that is helpful and makes sense. I'm very encouraged that the top two contributing factors that lead to bad hires are completely controllable. One of my former managers, when I was in med device sales, would always tell me, control the controllable. So in the hiring process, there's always going to be surprises and sometimes not good surprises, but let's focus on, and in life, what do you have control over? So sometimes it can make sense to, oftentimes it can make sense to take time and then later to communicate properly, to add in the extra steps in the interview process when needed, and that will later save you time. Thank you guys so much for watching, and definitely reach out with any comments, questions. Happy to help and hear you guys' thoughts, and I will see you next week.